Bomb Squad.
Yeah.
We are recording this after the election. Also, yeah, we're not going to do. I had like a video that I made that we put in front of the last video about the Indiegogo, and we'll still put the video at the end. But I think for the foreseeable future, I'm just going to talk about it. So yeah, our Indiegogo is still going. We got
This is a
featured
more
on
ambitious project. I've
Rooflord
started this
magazine, which is
Indiegogo
pretty
so we can
cool.
make Follow the best it
And
can
yeah,
be.
so if you guys want to
I'm
contribute,
assembling
even
an
if you
amazing
just
team
like,
to make
hey,
this
I want a
movie,
Blu-ray of
including
the
working with
movie, or for
iShape
some reason you
Productions,
want a
who did
poster,
the super cool
those are
Rorschach versus
available.
Lee short
That's the
films.
only way
Your
you're gonna be able to get a
donations
Blu-ray.
will be going to the effects,
Or
the
if
cast
you
and
just
the
want to
crew,
support us,
and of
that's
course,
another way. If
all
you're
the
if you're
blood.
listening to this and you're like,
In addition
hey,
to that,
how
if
can
you
I give
support the
these
film,
guys
you can get a
some of my
number of
disposable
perks
income
from your
before it
name in
all
the
runs
credit,
out?
a poster,
This is the way.
exclusive
This is the
screenings,
way to
and much
do
more.
it.
Yeah.
With your help, I know
January
we can
20th,
make
that's
Follow.
gonna go. So give it to us. But yeah, and then we'll put the video at the end. It gives you more information about the actual story. It's a pretty cool found footage movie about a streamer who is being stalked. It's my first slasher. There's gonna be a lot of blood and guts, so we need a little bit more help on this one. So we would appreciate it. But yeah, now that I've gotten rid of that in life commercial, I feel like a real podcaster being like, our sponsors are me.
Subway.
Yeah. It's like the opposite of a sponsorship. I'm losing money.
Yeah. Not the U.S. government.
But yeah, welcome. Oh, they haven't lost anything this week at all. Welcome to the podcast, guys. Today, we're covering The Man Who Killed Don Quixote, directed by Terry Gilliam, written by Terry Gilliam and Tony Grisoni. All right, that's a cool name.
Yeah.
Starring, what the hell? What are these names in IMDb? Okay, it stars Adam Driver. Adam Driver, welcome back.
I know. He's in another.
Let's get that agent on the phone.
He always steps in and helps these projects get on their feet.
Yeah,
he really does. If Adam Driver's starring in your movie, I don't know. Maybe take a look at that script again. Also starring Jonathan Pryce, starring Olga Kurycki.
Yeah, however you say her last name.
Yeah,
Kurycki,
we don't know how to
think,
say that.
maybe?
Yeah, Kurycki. Yeah, I think that's more correct.
I've been confused on that since Quantum of Solace, James Bond.
I know. And then also starring Stellan Skarsgård. How do I know how to pronounce that name? Because they're a cinematic. The family is a cinematic staple.
Truly,
so we have to show them proper respect.
International.
Also, I do think again, even with The Fountain, when we cover The Fountain next week, we're gonna do a less scene by scene breakdown of these movies and more in general. Because two of the movies that we watch, they're kind of all over the place in terms of timeline and stuff like that. So it doesn't make sense to be like, oh, and then this happened, and they're also more about the mood. There's a reason that I want to do that for this movie that's not that, but we'll get into it as soon as I talk about it. But this will be less linear, and because of that, we're gonna have Josh tell us what this movie. Oh, and then, but you know what? Before we do that, let me talk a little bit about this movie. We usually do trivia after the synopsis, but this is going to be like one of the longest trivia sections we've ever had. So let's get into it. So this movie, Tony Gilliam had been trying to make it for like 40 years. It has 29 years.
Yeah.
It has one of the most infamous examples of development. How it had such a long development that there's literally a movie about the failure of making this movie that none of the people in the actual movie are in that movie because they completely like recasted everyone.
Right.
Right. It was like 20 years ago.
Yeah. It was 20 years ago, and
we were in film school forever ago, and like we've been about this movie since like 2009. So like, and it was already in development hell. So like, this has also been kind of like an Andrew Hada passion project.
I know,
like following this movie.
So this movie was supposed to star Sean Connery. It was supposed to star John Cleese. It was supposed to, and this is as Don Quixote, which, I mean, we're already not off to a great start. It was supposed to star, there's someone else that, Robert Duvall at one point was going to star with Ewan McGregor. And then, like, they had one locked in that was going to star Johnny Depp, American's hero now. And also a Spanish guy who was literally learning. He was like a famous Spanish actor who was learning English for this role to do this. And if he, I will never feel bad for a Spaniard, but that kind of sucks that the movie got canceled and he had to learn a
Yeah.
whole new language for no real reason.
Well, he was
What was
like
his name?
deathly ill.
His name was
Right.
John Rochette.
Yeah, because it basically Lost in La Mancha is the version where it's that guy and Johnny Depp like that fell apart because they had
And
all the
that-
footage.
And that movie, and another reason I want to do the trivia is because the original version of this movie, first, it was just a straight up adaptation of Don Quixote. Then, because it spent so long in development, how it kind of changed to being about a marketing executive who goes back in time to Don Quixote's, and they mistake him for Pancho Sansa. And so
Has that been the
was
story
the
the
one that
whole
was
time? Or that's when they changed the
Yes.
story to that? Has it been that since
They-
the beginning of this production?
I think it was originally the very first one was just an adaptation of Don Quixote.
Okay.
That's what I found out. And then he kind of thought this one, after it had been in development hell for a while, and this is the one that he was prepared to start with Johnny Depp. So it's going to be kind of like a kid in Connecticut's court, the classic story. Hey
Mhm.
guys, we're going to start mentioning literature. Start reading. It seems to be
Yeah.
a big problem in America.
Trust me, it is.
And so, as a teacher and to people who love art, read more books,
Yeah.
you dummies. Including myself. I've been trying to read more this year. But, so then they're going to make it Kid in Connecticut's Court, where this marketing exec goes back in time. They mistake him for Don Quixote's sidekick, and he lives with the real Don Quixote. And that production was so, like, misguided. Like, producers dropped out in the middle of filming. There was, like, they told them, hey, don't film here. Or no, they said, you guys can film here because it's never rained here in, like, 30 years. And then they built the sets, and the next day it rained on the sets
Oh my
and
God.
destroyed everything, you know?
Yeah.
And then, like, people did, like, again, everyone was excited for this, but every time they had to restart it, it was, like, with less money. And even then, they started to make this movie, and then they had gotten kind of, started, they had finally gotten another producer who was, like an Italian guy who didn't really understand producing. Then he never gave him the money, so then they found another production to star, but then Terry Gilliam had signed such a terrible contract that technically this guy owned some of the rights. So then after the movie was made, he sued to try to stop the introduction of the movie. And he tried to ruin the movie. And it's like, hey, baby, Terry's already ahead of you. But anyway, so then
That was in
even after it
2018,
got...
or is this earlier?
This was early. This was this was from like 2016 until it gets
Okay.
released.
Gotcha.
Because he even tried to stop the Cannes release, and then they said Cannes, like the French government decided Cannes can do it. They can release the film, but before the movie actually got released, they had to give this guy a cut. So he eventually did get some of the money. And so then the movie's finally been released. And so now we're at the moment of release. And so then now that we're here, and through that thing, they changed the story from a kid in Connecticut's court going back in time to what it is now. And then Josh, take it away.
Okay, Jesus.
We're at 10 minutes and we haven't gotten to the plot.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so it is about he's a director, but he's like a commercial director in Spain shooting a commercial. Like the commercial's like Don Quixote, but selling like life insurance or something. But then he's like, oh, I actually did my student film here at this like village that's just like a mile away. I'm gonna go like look into it because I hate being a commercial director and my life's bad.
Yeah.
And he meets the guy who played Don Quixote in his like student film, but now that guy thinks he's Don Quixote again, and then it follows kind of a dreamscape of like he's like, is he Don Quixote, is he not, what's real, what's not, is this all in my head? It's very existential, and it is clearly a commentary on both the many failed attempts to make this movie, but also it's like he finally got to make it, but almost as an ironic commentary on the act of making it.
Yeah.
And does it work? Not really.
Yeah.
It is not satisfying.
Okay, Josh,
It's-
I don't know what part of synopsis involves you like giving your own critiques, especially when you're literally like we're on a podcast where you're gonna be able to share your thoughts.
He had to really get in there.
You're
He was
like
afraid.
you're like giving the critique. You're like, and then what happens is I watched it and my thoughts were this movie's no good.
So I'm
So,
being
well,
an expert.
I don't know,
judge
because
for
it's
my
almost
Letterboxd.
like the act of watching it is like it's like a Schenectady, New York thing where you're like the audience is part of it, but like as a commentary on why is this existing? Because he's asking that in the movie. He's like, why am I making this? You know,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it's interesting from that perspective.
Yeah.
All right. Well, yeah.
Yeah. Well, so it is hard to talk about this movie because I did watch this on Wednesday or Thursday, so it's like
Yeah, I do want to say before we get started,
filtered through a terrible week.
Megalopolis is like it's hard to talk about as a singular story because there's so much going on in it. The Fountain has like 8 different timelines, so it's hard to talk about. This movie is going to be kind of hard to talk about because it's been a bad week, but also it's a very monotonous movie. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy how much this movie, like, oh, you're making a movie about like a clueless man who thinks he's chasing giants, but he's really chasing windmills.
Yeah.
And you're literally watching that as a movie, but they don't realize that it's like not the story of the movie, it's about the making of the movie.
Right.
Because this movie, like, you know, you watch Megalopolis and you can say what you want about that film, but it's trying to go bigger. It's like he literally ends it with a declaration of the human race. So
Yeah.
Coppola is literally trying to inspire, and like in a way that's inspiring, and in a way that should have been the canary that nobody's wanted to see that movie. And then you look at The Fountain.
Yeah.
Oh, and the Fountain's kind of all mixed up. But this movie, the whole time you're watching it, you're like, you spent 29 years on this?
Yeah. Exactly. It's exactly what you were saying. Like for all of Megalopolis's flaws and everything, like for sure, it's like he had to tell this story for better or for worse. And like, yeah, it ends with the Constitution of the Human Race. It tells everything that Coppola feels about life. And it's like, okay, even though this is crazy and doesn't make a lot of sense, I can see why you were chasing this dream for so long. But then this movie is just like such a regular fucking movie. And it feels
Yeah,
like a movie that he
it's-
wrote in like the 70s or 80s. And just like he didn't
Yeah.
update himself or the script to like fit modern stuff. And it's just like, I did from like minute one. I was like, I don't give a shit about this movie at all.
Yeah, it's not. There's not like you don't even like feel the weight because I guess like say what you will, yeah, about Megalopolis because again, I don't think that's like a good movie, but like you feel the weight of like how he feels about like Adam Driver, Cesar Catalina.
Yeah.
In this, like Adam Driver's playing such like a rote kind of he's a shitty guy
Yeah.
who's like annoyed by everything, and it's like the comedy doesn't really land. Also, a lot of weirdly dated like Muslims. These are terrorist jokes for 2018.
And
like
casual misogyny.
Yeah.
And see, to me, okay, and like one of my biggest problems with the movie, and I like read Don Quixote when I was very young, and I haven't got back. It did make me want to go read it, so that's good.
Yeah.
But I like remember the main thing about Don Quixote was that it was like this romantic movie, you know, like or this story where he's doing everything for this love and like he's misguided,
Right.
but like he's not really treated. It's almost like he's not super judged by the book's author, and it feels like this movie. Terry Gilliam doesn't want to know anything about Don Quixote, and what he does know about him, he doesn't like. And it's like,
Totally.
but why?
Yeah, he's just a crazy
Why are
person
you
in
like?
this movie.
Yeah, he treats the character of Don Quixote as this kind of everyone should be ashamed, and Sancho Panza is really the person. But it's like, okay, but why would you make a movie? Why would you spend this long making this movie? And maybe it's unfair to like say, why did you do this? But it does kind of feel like there was a point along the way where Terry Gilliam forgot why he liked the story of Don Quixote so
Yeah.
much. And
Yeah.
it became about getting this movie finished.
Mhm.
Even in this story itself. And it's hard to like, with Megalopolis, like I said last week, like there's points where it's hard to separate the creation of that movie from that movie.
Totally.
But not because of Coppola. Coppola doesn't ever like really address it. But Terry Gilliam wants you to remember this. He's changed the story to be about a director. The movie literally starts by saying 29 years in the making.
Yeah.
And so he's putting that for you to know. And he kind of wants that pat on the back. But it's like, no, man, you're Don Quixote now. You don't understand that, like, you've made a movie that sucks.
Yeah.
You know?
You look like an obsessed maniac, like, with nothing to show for it.
And, like, and like Josh and Wayne were saying, like, it's not funny. It's very mean-spirited.
Yeah.
And it's, like, it's casually misogynistic and, like, sexist and racist. And it's like, hey, man, this is not, I don't know. It just feels like so against what the Don Quixote story was. And so, like, even, like, in its own world, it just kind of feel like, I don't understand why even Adam Driver is following this guy around. Is like, oh, I love that he's like, why is he following him around at all? Like, it just kind of seems like he doesn't really care about anything.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to...
It's lost the heart. Like, it's because I mean that was kind of the whole thing. If you watch, like, and I could see why you became obsessed with, like, Lost in La Mancha, because, like, he was so into it. Like, okay, we're gonna have the giants be this, and everything's gonna be this, like, kind of, like, perfect, like, fairy tale world. And, like, you can almost see where it's like, okay, I guess, like, he got some of the practical designs are still here, but he forgot that, like he's like, okay, here's all the stuff, but he forgot, like, the heart of it. I don't know. It's weird. It's like, it kind of reminds me of you guys know about Duke Nukem Forever? How that game took like 20 years to come out.
It wasn't very good.
No one gave a shit. It's just kind of like, it was like a bad sequel 20 years later.
Cool.
You know.
And I think that's what's funny, and, like, it's even better exemplified by Duke Nukem Forever because of the fact that, like, Duke Nukem was a fun game. I love Duke Nukem. I had the toys and everything.
Yeah, super.
But, like, nobody was really... Yeah, but nobody was like, oh, man, this Duke Nukem sequel is going to fucking blow everyone's minds. But then it stayed in development hell. They would have an ad for it, and the game would get canceled.
Yeah.
And so, like, this game that should have just been Duke Nukem, like, killing cops and, like, or killing, like, the pig cops brains and making jokes about boomsticks. That's all they gave us. But it's like, after waiting 30 years, you're just kind of like, oh,
here's this.
Yeah, I mean, what else was I expecting? But also,
the
why did it take
status.
30 years?
Right.
Yeah.
And this kind of feels like, and it's like, there's also, Adam Driver, he plays, he's a director, and at the beginning, he's, like, cheating on the main producers, or he's cheating with the main producer's wife.
He's sleeping with a wife,
And he, like, he almost gets caught, and he, like, doesn't care about the wife or the producer, and it's like, and it, like, the whole thing's kind of, like, presented like, isn't it funny that producer's pissed that his wife is banging some other dude? It's like, it's not funny. Right. That sucks.
That's fucking 80s humor, man. That's like, and it's not even done well.
It's very not updated.
Look at this moron who loves his wife. It's like, wait, who's the hero?
And then the other main female character is, like, the actress who worked in his movie when she was, like, 15, and now she's, like, a prostitute for a rich guy, I guess. Who just like he, like, degrades her in public, and she's like, yeah, it's a living, and you're just like, what is
this? Even Adam Driver degrades her in public, and it's like, wait, what are we, like, who are we supposed to like in
and
this
there's a part
movie?
where someone's talking to him, and they're just like, whenever you first met her, she was 15, and he was like, 15? That wasn't me. It's just like,
and I mean, that's like
like, what is this Kevin Smith humor doing in the Don Quixote movie?
So absurd. I really like what Josh was saying. We're all trying to think about the heart stuff, like, because, like, maybe, like, once you've made this movie or tried to 8 times, you just get on the set and you're just like, here we go again, and it's like they were just trying to fucking film this shit, just like bop 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 bop, just before production.
Just to get it out, no matter what.
And it does, like, I mean, okay, and it happens a little bit later, but you think of, like, a Terry Gilliam movie, and I will be fair, just to be fair, I'm not, like, the hugest fan of Terry Gilliam. I love, what's this
12
good
Monkeys,
one?
Brazil. Those are the 2 bangers.
No, the other one.
Time Bandits?
Which
Was
one?
Brazil
Uh,
12 Monkeys?
No, there's. Oh,
Fear and Loathing
I
in
like
Las
Fear and
Vegas
Loathing.
is
Yeah.
my favorite. Yeah.
I haven't seen Time Bandit. I do like Monty Python's Holy Grail,
Yeah.
but it has like
Yeah,
a
I think he
limited.
directed all those, right?
Yeah.
Life of Brian. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, I like 12 Monkeys, but I think like the original La Jate is so much better. Like it blows it out of the water
Oh,
by
I've actually
so
never seen
much that it's hard for me. Yeah,
See, yeah,
I'm
I've
gonna
never
Quentin
seen it, but-
Tarantino it and be like, why do I need this movie remade? It's already
Yeah.
and also it's only 25 minutes, so it wins twice. So I'm not the hugest fan, so maybe it's not for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. I mean, and
but
I
I-
love Fear and Loathing, but I just
Yeah.
couldn't.
Very
Yeah,
casual
it's
fan.
like kind of snippy. It's
But-
because like, yeah, I don't know.
But
it's,
I
it's
don't
almost hard to
think.
say.
See, the hard thing to me is like until the end, this doesn't feel like a Terry Gilliam film. It's
Yeah.
ugly.
Yeah.
It's,
Unimaginative.
the lighting is terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no like funny like asides or anything. It doesn't feel like a Terry Gilliam film at all. Like even 12 Monkeys, Brad Pitt's very funny in that movie. Like he brings that like it's almost like Terry Gilliam can't contain himself from making it look weird
Right.
and having like a funny character. But in this movie, it's like, oh, he can't contain himself because it's not.
It's
Yeah.
very sedate.
Yeah.
There is one part where it almost like kind of hits at it. It's
With the night.
I mean, the plot's whatever. They end up at this castle where everyone's doing kind of like a fake cosplay,
yeah.
and they're like
Yeah.
treating the Don Quixote guy as like really him, but you know, they're all like kind of evil rich people.
Yeah.
But they're like, oh, he needs to ride this horse to like the moon, and there's like a scene like it's like him. He thinks he's riding the horse to the moon, and they're doing like a lot of like because he has like a blindfold on, a lot of like stuff to make him think. You know, he's like on a magic journey. And it's like, oh, he's like lighting this and kind of like angling it really well. Like it almost like there's like a minute where you're almost like caught by the magic of like what the movie could be. You know what I
Totally,
mean?
yeah.
There is a part. There's a part at the end where he kind of goes up against some giants and he finds out they're windmills.
Yeah.
And I like watching that part. I was like, why wasn't the whole movie like this? Looks cool
Yeah.
as hell. Like, why
So,
didn't you
and I
just
wonder if
make
it was like because it's all practical effects, and so it does
Right.
look really cool. But I'm like, maybe that was just so expensive. He's like, we only have enough for these 3 scenes.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know?
see, and to me, that's like the weird thing is that because he had so many practical effects, you'd almost think like, how expensive could this have been?
Yeah.
You know, like it's general green screen. It's like the effect, especially Terry Gilliam, like his effects. He kind of does that David Lynch thing where it's more important to get the effect done than it is to make it super
Yeah.
realistic, and you kind of like play with that, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, Monty Python, the God character, the foot,
Right,
like,
right. It's all kind of
it becomes their
farcical.
style. So it's like if anyone could have like made the budget stretch by like doing wacky things, it's Terry
Yeah,
Gilliam.
totally.
You know.
His heart just wasn't in it this time, I guess.
See, but that's the thing. How could his heart not have been in
No.
it? You're chasing that windmill for 30
Yeah.
years. You know, you think that once it's in front of you, you're gonna charge
Yeah,
it.
it was just
Um,
devoid of all joy and emotion, and it was just so fucking boring. It was from minute one. I was just like, this sucks. This is bad. This
Yeah.
is gonna not be cool.
Even like there's a scene where Jonathan Pryce does a good job, but again, it's like why were you constantly not hiring Spanish or Latino people to
Yeah.
play Don Quixote?
Yeah, they're in Spain, aren't they? In the
Um,
movie, or by a village.
Yeah, yeah, they are, and literally everyone around them they're
Yeah.
like everyone's like, "Oh, hola, señor, cómo estás?" And then Don Quixote's like, "Hello, chap.
Yeah,
Let's get some fish and chips." It's like, okay, I don't know what movie we're making, but there's a scene where Jonathan Pryce, because he's a good actor, they find him the first time and they realize that he thinks it's Don Quixote. And I was like, oh yeah, this movie has Don
right.
Quixote.
Yeah, it's
in
like
it.
40 minutes into the movie.
Like the costume. Yeah, the costume is real cool. They're in Spain. Like a lot of those buildings were built
Yeah.
back then. You know, like what exactly was going to hurt the budget that they didn't just do in this film?
Yeah.
You know, because it's like they have them fighting the giants. They have the costumes. Like the only costume they don't have is Pancho's. But I can guarantee that Pancho's costume is going to be less expensive than all of Adam Driver's suits.
For
in
real.
this film.
Right.
And so it's just kind of like it is. And again, like I don't know if with Megalopolis kind of proves that I wouldn't have been able to separate the making of this film, the actual film, But the fact that the movie doesn't want me to
I know.
forget it makes it harder to forget it.
Like you said, like it literally starts off with 29. I think it says 29 years in the making and the unmaking, and it's like
Yes,
emphasis, underline.
Yeah. It's almost like
like imagine if before the empty space I put my girlfriend broke up with me during.
Yeah,
this.
exactly.
Yeah. Filmed on 35 millimeter.
Yeah, exactly.
Taking you out, strange darling.
Yeah.
You're garbage.
You're trash and we hate you.
But yeah, there is kind of like you are grading on a curve, because while I don't think the movie works, if you had like seen it and it turns out they made it in 1989 and you're just now hearing about it, you'd be like, oh, that was like over ambitious, but I could see like what he was trying to do. But you're like, it took this long to like, you know, it's almost like the Baby Driver thing where you're like, Edgar Wright, you've made like 5 better movies than this. Like,
see, and I think like
this is like always, just out of film school, you know.
It's always funny because it happens to Wes Anderson too. It happens to Edgar Wright. And it happens to a lot of them where they make, even Tarantino, depending on which movie you pick. But like once they make like a bad version of that movie, you kind of like hold the same things. Like in Baby Driver, like what's his name? Edgar Wright was like, oh yeah, we had the soundtrack before we even made the movie. Right. We got the rights. So that everything was cut exact. And then when I was watching it, I was like, man, you should pick some different songs. These songs suck. You know? And then it becomes that trap thing. Now I'm just gonna attack.
Right, like they made it for the song.
It becomes that trap thing where it's like, exactly, like if that movie had been good, nobody would have cared that he made that movie for
that it was his daughter. Yeah,
but because it wasn't good, you're like, okay, well, you clearly didn't care if this movie was good. But you did care if your daughter, because your daughter literally sings in every single scene.
Right.
Yeah, and her performances are good, but that's not why you're watching the movie.
I'm not here to watch performances of that daughter. I'm here to watch
Lady Raven.
Yeah, I'm here to watch Josh Hartnett take that shirt off. But yeah, and so it becomes that thing. I mean, even like, I know that, I tell people this sometimes, because especially in independent films, you see it a lot. And I've even fallen for that thing where you're like, hey guys, guess what? This shot's a oneer. Like this short film's a oneer.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, that's really cool. Probably everyone around you who's your friend is going to think that that's very impressive. You know who's not going to think that's impressive? Anyone who's watching that film doesn't know you. Because they don't know what went into it. They don't know that this is your first oneer. They don't know any of that stuff. They're just watching the film to watch it. And I think that was always like a big wake-up call for when we did last ones. It's like, and good and bad, you know, like when people love it, they like it because they like it. There's no reason for them to dislike it. But when they don't like it, it's because they didn't like it. Like, they're not trying to be nice about it. They're not trying to be your friend. And at the same time, when they like it, they're also not trying to do that. And so I think it's that thing where like, but I don't know. It's kind of,
it
it's
makes
just
sense,
kind of like make stuff.
He's almost trying to do the student film thing by being like, hey, this took me 29 years to make. So like, don't just take it on its own terms. Take it as like, I tried really hard for a long time.
I will not. I will keep that in mind.
Yeah, and
how embarrassing that is. No,
yeah, exactly. And you see a lot of that. Like, again, going back to Trap, you see a lot of people being like, "Wow," and like Shyamalan showed what a girl dad he is, and it's like, yeah, he did. You know,
I still haven't seen it
because I got COVID thanks to Trap. I got trapped, but yeah. So I think it's hard, like, because it's hard to tear into this movie too, because of the fact that it took 29 years. But at the same time, when he's not putting in, it seems like, again, once you watch this film, it seems like all the 29 years and making and unmaking and talking about it, it ends up feeling like a marketing gimmick, which we know it wasn't, because we literally saw like every star go through the list.
I didn't know this movie came out until you said you wanted to do it for the podcast.
Oh, really? Yeah,
same. I had not heard of it.
And as like, and another thing is like, William, did you watch
No, the documentary. I did not watch it.
So I watched The Lost in La Mancha. I had already seen it, and I remember watching that movie the first time and being like, "This is inspiring." There's like, and the movies, like, if you watch like a making of, the movie doesn't necessarily have to be good for you to like the making of. One of my favorite making of films is My Life Directed by Nicholas Winding Refn, and Only God Forgives is probably my least liked of those movies.
Oh yeah,
that's made,
such a good
but
documentary, such a bad movie.
It's still an interesting documentary because you're watching this director make, and like there's still a lot of interest in the documentary of Lost in La Mancha. You get to see Johnny Depp like as a regular person, being a regular actor. You see them as like you see their struggles as like their the sets getting destroyed, but also like after watching the movie, going back to Lost in La Mancha, you start to see maybe, or at least you start to unintentionally diagnose what happened. Like one of the first things that happened is they get there, they're trying to talk to the Giants, and like nobody on their team knows Spanish, and so they have to hire a Spanish person. And it's like, wait, you guys went to Spain to make a movie about one of the most famous Spaniards, and you didn't think you're probably going to run into people who didn't speak English or speak Spanish?
What year was that? Like, when did that happen?
That was, when was Lost in La Mancha? I think it's
like early 2000s, super early 2000s.
So like, what other problems did you see like in the documentary?
Like 2002.
Well, it is like it's a lot of like they start going before they have like all funding secured. They like they're kind of like every time they run into a mistake, they're like, okay, well, we'll just shoot this instead of this, and it's like, but is anyone really paying attention to like the story and what's going on? It just seems like a lot of, and again, like this is a movie. This was Lost in La Mancha was 2002. And so this is a movie, so like they might have cut out all the like boring stuff, but like they do leave a lot in there. And
all I remember, and this is kind of funny because it's like the humor is the same. At one point, to like convince investors not to drop out because they were losing money so rapidly, they like bring him to set for one day, but the guy is so ill he like can't get off his horse. The Spanish actor, like. And so they kind of try to distract the investors by having Johnny Depp do like comedy business with the donkey. And he's doing just very rote Jack Sparrow, like, what are you doing? And I'm just like, oh, this movie kind of looks like it was going to be bad. Like, I just remember that like in my head being like, yeah, this like kind of wacky Monty Python slapstick is just not really working for this. And it doesn't in this one either.
Yeah.
So.
See, and like one of the other things is that they like they pick up one of their locations and then they like find out the first day that there's like a shooting range next door.
What?
But it's also like that's kind of your responsibility to know that beforehand, and so it's just a lot of stuff like that where it's like in retrospect you kind of look at it and it's like, but yeah, you guys weren't really thinking about the realities of what you were doing.
Yeah, they almost had like and it's funny because this was almost like the Fire Festival thing. They were like, let's just put it out there and we'll figure it out as we go. It's like you can't do that for a large scale project. Right. Like you can't just wing it the day of because then things are going to go really wrong.
And then like trying to continue when you're losing your main actor and like going all over the world to have to impress your producers when you guys are running out of money. It's just kind of those type of things where it's like, don't bring out Liz Cheney at the last second. It's probably going to be a bad idea when we look back on it.
Well, so about going on to a movie without like the finished script and everything like that. So I might be wrong, but I think like Gladiator, I think they only had like half the script before going into the movie. So what do you guys think is the difference between like Gladiator versus The Man Who Killed Don Quixote?
I think the difference is that the way they direct, because you see a lot of that in movies. Another one. I mean, one of the most famous disasters is Apocalypse Now, and it is one of the best movies ever made. And they were literally like, I mean, not to talk too much about Apocalypse Now, but they literally got to I think it was Cambodia. Marlon Brando immediately told Coppola that he hadn't read the script, he wasn't going to read the script, and he was going to say the lines how he wanted to say.
And he gained a bunch of weight.
And so he wouldn't even read the book that the script was based on. And so Coppola was like literally like they spent, but again, like they stopped filming. They spent 2 weeks hammering down exactly what Brando was going to say. Everyone hated them for it, and they spent like $1 million they wasted that money. But Coppola knew that he could not continue until Branda was at least on the same
Right.
page with the character, and so he was willing to take that. He knew what he had to do to get what he needed. It's kind of like me and Josh had a very troubled production on Borderland that I won't get too into, but like one of the things I told them was like, hey, there's a certain point where like we just need to get what we're getting. Like I know this is hell and we're getting stuff, but at the end of the day, we're getting all our shots, we're getting all our coverage, and I know what I need. So like the existential stuff, it won't matter at the end of the day. And nobody was in danger or anything. It was just kind of like bullshit problem. But
but that's also such small scale, like, you know, where it's like even when things are going well, that's like you're working with like 6 people, whereas this was like an insanely elaborate, you know.
But I mean, Apocalypse Now was a bigger movie than this by like 3 times, so that doesn't really work.
That is true, but I almost feel like Apocalypse
coming
Now
out
is
the
so
Godfather,
like
and
so it's like
chaotic.
he does have some clout. Gillian at this point, what's the last thing he made? You know?
There's like a prestige, and they also kept shoveling money towards it. Sorry, go ahead.
I don't want to disparage that idea that you can't start a script. I mean, like Iron Man didn't have a completed script. Yeah. That movie came out great.
I didn't know that.
You know, like William said, Gladiator. I think it's just like if the director has the vision, because like if you know where you want your character to end up in Gladiator or in Iron Man or something like that, you know that like, okay, we can film this scene and I at least know how Tony Stark's character should act at this point. And really that's like characters will push a story forward more so than the story will. And so if you at least understand your story or your characters, you can get away with a lot without having the full script. But and again, like if you look at this movie, it doesn't seem like he has a grasp on even Don Quixote. And he definitely doesn't have a grasp on Adam Driver's character because he comes off as so unlikable. And so, exactly. And so I think that's the difference, is that it feels like Terry Gilliam wanted to make the movie, but he didn't want to make this movie. He just wanted to make a movie about Don Quixote.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he's like, hey, Adam Driver, you're the 8th guy. Just kind of do it. Who cares? Like, there's no, like, inspiration there.
I do like that Adam Driver was like, he did this, and then he was like...
It worked out well. Everyone remembers the
it's actually... This makes me feel better for, like, this make me like, man, Adam Driver really does, like, want to, like, help these directors achieve their dreams, even when it's probably not going to work. And I almost, like, respect that, you know, more than the movie. You know, it's another funny one. You know, you talk about when the documentary is way better than the movie. Overnight about Troy Duffy.
Right.
Oh yeah. Overnight's also good
because that's actually a funny one because it's not, you don't even feel bad, like, whereas you kind of feel bad for like Terry Gilliam and stuff.
He's like a raging asshole.
Troy Duffy, like, oh no, this guy deserves to fail.
William, what were you going to say
about the Troy Duffy thing?
No. And I do want to take a second to say that I mean, I love Megalopolis. I don't know if I liked it as a movie, but I did like the idea. I did not like this movie as much, but I do want to say that I have a ton of respect for Adam Driver. Like he did this movie literally after The Last Jedi.
Oh yeah.
And so he took his clout from Star Wars to do like afterwards. I mean, he did Black Klansman. He had done that Minority Stories. He did Silence.
Yeah.
He did Patterson. So he is very much Marriage Story. So he, like, it kind of sucks when he makes these. Well, it doesn't really even suck. Like, he makes these movies with these kind of legendary directors, and you know, I think it's better that and not all of them hit, but every once in a while you get like this. You get Marriage Story, you get The Last Duel, you get House of Gucci, one of the best movies of the decade. And so, you know, people are always like, oh, and I even made that joke earlier, like, let's get Adam Driver's agent on the phone. It's like, man, he has a good track record.
No, he like, and even when like it doesn't work, like he's never really the problem. You know what I mean? Like, I think the only time I've ever seen him turn in like not a good performance, and this isn't even really his fault because I think he has like 5 lines in the whole movie. Is 65, and nothing was gonna say that.
Well,
so it didn't matter, you know.
I'll say watching these 2 movies back to back, you see how good of an actor Adam Driver is, because they both look like they're nothing roles, but watching them back to back, you're like, oh, he had to do a lot to do these nothing roles. You know, like in Megalopolis, he's very monotone, he's very dead. He like every time he talks, he's like this. And in this one, he's almost the complete opposite. He's like wacky Pauly Shore character where he's like, blah, action. And it's like, what the hell is this? You know? But like, if you watch both of those movies, you kind of get the sense like, oh, this is how this guy is in real life. But when you watch them back to back, you're like, well, it can't be because they're so different, making you realize like, oh, he's just doing a really good performance in both, you know? Like, whether that performance is actually good or not is up to interpretation, but he's doing clearly what the director wants.
I would agree.
Yeah, that's one of those things. I don't know if you guys watch SNL, nor do I generally recommend watching SNL, especially this week, right? But anytime Adam Driver's on, it's like, oh yeah, he's like really good at like playing 8 different types of character. You know, it's like it's almost like he's like a really good, like he could be like an improv actor. He can almost play anything.
Super versatile.
Like one of our finest
honestly,
actors of this
like him and
generation.
Oscar Isaac, I think are the two like best male actors of our generation.
You only watch Star Wars movies, that's why. Yeah. So you've only seen those two.
William's like in Daisy Ridley. Yeah. But no, I think like, this one's a little bit harder because it's also hard to like dog on this movie when he tried so.
I felt bad for hating it.
Years to make it, but at the same time, I know, and I also feel bad because it's like we don't really have a good definitive Don Quixote story, movie. I mean, we have a story, but they're like, I think the best version of Don Quixote still is the Wishbone's version, which isn't what you should be doing.
You know? Actually, you know, it's funny because on Tubi, the Man of La Mancha is on there, and I was like, I should watch the real one after this, but this movie was so like bad. I was like, I can't. I made it like 2 minutes. I was like, that's enough. I couldn't give it a chance.
Yeah, especially like, you know, you think of Frankenstein, and even though Frankenstein isn't very, it's not super accurate to the book, it at least like is definitive. And this movie, there's not really a definitive version in pop culture of Don Quixote. So like, you do kind of want that, and we just didn't.
I mean, it's like a super early novel, so I don't know. I mean, maybe that's just hard to adapt. Like it's like episodic, right? It's like not even.
It's,
I've never read it. It's like story, right?
Yeah, and it goes off on tangents, so it's very hard to kind of like pay attention. And then they were like, "Hey, don't go off on tangents next time." And he was like, "Okay," and then he still went off on tangents. So we respect the king never listening to any critics, except when they make the man who killed Don Quixote. I think like. Yeah, I do wish it had been better. I do respect that he did it at least, but
you know what's interesting when if you're trying to I assume anyone who's gonna try to watch this, which you know, watch it or not, it's interesting like conceptually. When you search for the streaming version on Google, the first recommendation is on Philo. It's on Peacock, the whole thing. But the first thing's like, oh, it's free on Philo, and I was like, what's Philo? I think it's like some free like public access like type streaming service. But it's only like 95 minutes long on Philo.
Perfect. It's a perfect length.
Because I started watching it and I was like, why are they cutting stuff, but they're cutting out all the swears? Like they'll bleep it during the swears, and they're swearing constantly in this movie. So it's bleeping every minute. So you're like, this is annoying. And then they like cut when he's about to bang the boss's wife. But I was like, how did they cut like 35 minutes? And then so I started watching it on the real service, Peacock. I was like, is there just like hardcore sex and nudity in this movie? Not really. So what did they cut? You know? And I'm not going to go back and watch it. But it is very weird that like the public version is like 95 minutes shorter. And I'm like, again, what was missing? Weird. Just completely like, because there's no... Other than him trying to sleep with the boss's wife at the very beginning, there's no remotely sexual scenes. So I really am like confused as to what's not there. You know?
And it's even funnier because that scene where he's banging the wife is weirdly like
weirdly long. Is that what you said?
And you're like, what? Yeah, it's like we really watch him go at it for a while, and I'm like, but why though? Like why? This movie is this like. I don't know. You do kind of get that a little bit in Megalopolis, but since it was like I had to watch it.
You don't have any.
Yeah, you don't register
like,
as much.
Why is this so sexual for? Like for a movie that doesn't really call for it. I don't know. Yeah. It's another weird like. What were you making? Who was the audience for this movie? You know,
literally the only thing.
It was
Yeah,
Terry
yeah.
Gilliam, but of the '90s, not the
His
current
early
Terry
ego.
Gilliam.
Yeah. It was John Cleese, and he was like, "If I see one trans,"
Be my buddy J.K. Rowling.
he
That's
gets
what he
mad.
said.
He doesn't like. Speaking of chasing windmills, John Cleese. But yeah, I think, again, that's the hardest thing about this. We had picked this movie. We've clearly done a podcast on it. We're at 45 minutes. But the best way to explain it is that this movie is not only about Don Quixote, but this movie is Don Quixote. It is Terry Gilliam chasing a windmill, thinking it's a giant, and he ends up with nothing, and we also end up
And we're all
with
the
nothing.
zanier for it.
So, very weird. Yeah, and we're all. But Terry Gilliam still keep making movies unless you're also a turf.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm just not going to do that.
But
Just
I
gonna-
hope not.
British, who knows?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm just gonna never check in on any British person and hope for the best. 'Cause,
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's going wild over there. But yeah, any last thoughts on the man who killed Don Quixote?
Watch Lost in La Mancha and think about how cool that movie sounds, and then don't
Yeah.
watch this. That's my recommendation, because that is a really good
Yeah.
documentary.
It sounds like the documentary is the way to go. I haven't seen it yet, but it sounds way more. It's the most interesting thing about this film. So.
Yeah, I do think so. And I think like that's the thing with Megalopolis. There's so much to discuss that it gets to the point where it's not the most interesting. But this one, the story was clearly the most interesting. I kind of wish we had done this one last so we could compare it to the other two and what happens when it comes off good. But having said that, we did not know. This is the first time. I think I had maybe seen a little bit of it before.
Yeah.
But I was insanely bored of it.
So
this is the
pretty
first time
profoundly
kind of
boring
new
for how
and
good it
wouldn't
should
And
be.
listen, guys, this movie, like, hey, we can do another episode on this movie next week because I have forgotten.
Yeah, I had to write a
99%
already.
we could do.
What even fucking happened?
I know. I literally
Yeah,
have the
yeah.
Wikipedia synopsis next to me. I think like. Yeah, it would be like our next podcast is going to be us watching this movie every week. And
Just really,
yeah.
really getting to the heart of it.
We've just been.
I
Like,
remember
constantly,
two scenes this guy. But yeah, I don't know. It's always good. I'll never like not recommend a movie where you can swing. You make big swings, but again, like
No way, they're
it's not
old,
big
tired
in this
swings.
movie. It's very small.
Yeah, it's weirdly all the swings were like
Yeah.
20 years ago
Yeah.
behind the scenes, so now it's just
Yeah.
like just there.
Yeah. Like I'm glad you spent 20 years so you
Yeah.
could
Hang
make
up
fun
the
of
gloves,
Muslims,
Terry.
I guess.
Hang
I
up
don't
those
know.
gloves.
It sounds bad. Yeah. Like that wasn't even relevant at the time. But
When did he
anyway.
write that joke?
Also, imagine if he had kept those in and released it on 2002
Yeah.
right after 9/11. It's like, oh my god, bro! Like, what's wrong with you?
I know, like, because you're like, when was this written, and why are you playing
Yeah.
into this? Because literally, it's Adam Driver going like, "These terrorists are gonna behead us," and you're like, "Don't,
Yeah.
Yeah.
don't,
Jesus
don't do
Christ.
that."
But yeah. So next week we're gonna talk about The Fountain by Darren Aronofsky. So that one should be cool. Another movie that took a long time. I think it's probably the least
Yeah.
amount of time, but still quite a bit of time. We'll talk about it next week as we discuss The Fountain. Now we're going to show you the commercials for the Indiegogo. Again, we would appreciate any donations. This is us e-begging. Don't make
Because
us
we will,
join
yeah.
OnlyFans because we will.
We have a podcast
Yeah,
set up.
we will. Hey, over here. Yeah, go over here. It's director Andrew Hutta, who made the empty space on the last ones. I'm supposed to be telling you about my new project, Fallout. There's just one little problem. As you can see, I'm in a little bit of a pickle. But don't worry, with your help, we can figure it all out. So come on, let's go.
The reason he's chasing me is because he's obsessed with the subject of Fallout, Ali X. She's a popular streamer. She's having this very special Halloween episode, but he's gonna make it truly frightening. As a killer makes his way into the house, it's gonna be a fight to the death between Allie and her stalker, and there can only be one survivor. Followed is going to be found footage film because we want you to be right there in the terror with Allie. We're inspired by such films as Scream, District 9, and the entire giallo genre because we really want those colors to pop, especially the blood. Okay, I think we lost. Come on, let's go. Oh, that was close. So if you haven't figured it out by now, Followed is going to be my first slasher film. But while we do want to give you a fun, cool slasher film, Followed wants to talk about a little bit more about parasocial relationships and about internet culture and about how the person on the other side of the screen might not be who you think they are. But to make this movie, we're going to need your help. Because this is a more ambitious project, I've started this Indiegogo so we can make Follow the best it can be. I'm assembling an amazing team to make this movie, including working with iShape Productions, who did the super cool Rorschach vs. V short film. Your donations will be going to the effects, paying the cast and the crew, and of course, all the blood. In addition to that, if you support the film, you can get a number of perks, from your name in the credit, a poster, exclusive screenings, and much more. With your help, I know we can make Followed a unique and special type of slasher, unlike one anyone has ever seen. And the best part of it is, we'll be able to stop that killer once and for all. Yeah, that'll be cool. So donate today, before it's too late.